of the days with myself, Dr. Cheryl Chapman, and with
me, Dr. Marion Bevington.
One day I'll get the right way around.
That's where I am.
Actually, if I do that, I might a bit lower down. It looks like I'm going straight into your ear. Anyway, here we are on this lovely, delightful day again after the bank holiday. Bank holiday Tuesday, I think they call it.
Bank holiday blues day.
Oh yeah, blues day. People have had to go back to work. I remember, yesterday I said that the couple that I'm staying with me at the family, they were like, "What are you doing on bank holiday?" For it to be exciting, and I was like, "I just do what I do every day, which is just love to help people." So today, Dr. Maz and Dr. Ches, we are here to answer one of the questions that has come from one of the Find Your Why Foundation members, either from the Live Love Laugh Lounge, which is where the wise women hang out, or the man cave where the wise men hang out. So the question is, why am I still in a relationship that doesn't serve me? Wow. Why are you still in a relationship, Maz, that no longer serves you?
Well, because there is actually some aspect of it that must be serving me. And I mean, there's lots of different things, possibilities here, isn't there? Because what kind of relationship? Could be an intimate relationship, could be a working relationship, could be anything really. It could be a family member that steps over you like a doormat every time and you don't stop them. So, but when you're in a relationship that's not serving you, what is normally happening is that there's something familiar about that relationship that is holding you in it. So, for example, in my background, there was a lot of violence at home. And so, in a way, violence was the version of attention that we got as kids. So actually, to be shouted at and told off and slapped, was like that was normal level of attention. And so I know that it would be quite easy for me to have gone into relationships. For whatever reason, I tend like the opposite way. I went to a place where you don't lay a hand on anybody. There is no violence allowed. And in fact, I probably went a little bit too over the balance line with that into a place where peace happens, because then people do just walk all over you. But I was never in anything that was a violent relationship physically. But I have been in relationships that have been quite bullying psychologically, and guilt, like throwing guilt on me was a 7-year relationship I was in. And it was just because that was how my mum had treated me. And so to me, it felt like I was being paid attention to. And that was one of the things that I wanted. So it was serving my sense of being paid attention to. Unfortunately, my sense of being paid attention to had been programmed or conditioned by a very negative childhood. And so I ended up in more than one relationship that absolutely didn't serve me at all. And yet I felt like I was really in love with the person because I felt like they were paying me loads of attention. And, it was like I was receiving all of this stuff. I was labeling it love because that's what I thought the attention was about. And that can happen in not just intimate relationships, it's happened in friendships as well. It's happened when I've been at work. So there's always which relationships are you talking about? And when you say doesn't serve you, you've got to be really, really clear and understand clearly why it's not serving you, and then get to the underneath stuff. They're called, what are they called? It'll come to me. These secondary gains, they're called. So when you do actually, you are being served, but it's not as simple as that. So that's a very complicated answer to that question.
Well, but it's true, isn't it? I mean, and it kind of, for me, boils down to the fact that the mind loves what's familiar.
Exactly.
So being brought up in a family environment where X is going on, and that could be, not necessarily, bullying or abusive or alcoholic, or, it might be that your mother's a narcissism. Narcissism. Easy for you to be narcissistic. It could be that she loves herself, do you know what I mean? And so you don't get any attention. So you're in a relationship where you don't get any attention, but the brain kind of goes, well, this is how it is. Mm-hmm. I guess this is my life. This is what I've always known. So it loves what's familiar. So it doesn't think that there's anything wrong with it. I guess really, the question is, why am I in a relationship that no longer serves me? It's kind of like, why am I in a relationship that's toxic? And interestingly enough, there is another question I think that really comes before that, and that is, how do I know if I'm not in the right relationship? You know, how do I know if I'm in a relationship that isn't right for me? So I was kind of thinking about this, and you're right, Maz, it can be, you know, an intimate relationship, it can be friends, it can be family, it can be, you know, even relationships at work. You know, it could be that you're working for somebody and that relationship no longer serves you. So it could just be in so many different places. And I guess the thing is, you know, what is it that's happening that you could recognize as a signal that the relationship that you're in, wherever that is no longer serving you? Well, for me, the first thing is I don't want to be with that. I don't want to be in the same room as that person for whatever reason. What sort of things would say to you, Maz, that you weren't in the right relationship? How would you know?
Well, you kind of know when you're in the right relationship because other people agree. You do, because, you know, friends and family, when they find out about the relationships that you're in, if you talk to them about those relationships and you don't hear them say, oh God, you know, they get a bit concerned about your role or your position in the relationship. And the other thing I think about being in the right relationship is that the person who you're in the relationship with would never have to say, oh, I promise I'll change. So that would be a telltale sign for me. Oh, I promise I'll change, because that means it's what's happened is not acceptable. And when people have to say that they're going to change, that's very often not when it happens. Anybody who said that, I'll come back when the proof is here. So at the end of the day, it could be what other people are saying. It could be the fact that you don't actually want to be in a room with that person for too long, and it could be that you get a churny stomach. You know, like you get some physical signs, don't you? Sweaty palms, headache. Start talking to, oh my God, what am I going to say? Oh, I know what's going to happen here, and start to second guess what this person might say, because you're used to them being either maybe criticism or, you know, maybe they're always finding fault. That's that criticism, Cheryl. Hashtag just say. Controlling.
Controlling. You know, someone always had a knick-knack. Maybe they don't speak to you. You know, so what anything that really makes you not feel like happy. I mean, that's pretty much a good indicator, isn't it?
And I think I mean, relationships have ups and downs, but it's if you're in a relationship and there's a lot of downs and you're not talking about them, that for me is a big issue. If you're not able to actually discuss what's going on and help each other to understand the position of each of you and whatever's going on in that situation. So yeah, if you feel too I mean, I was scared to talk to the first guy, not because of there was anything violent about him, but I didn't, when he'd get upset and he'd get really quite sulky, and I didn't like him when he was sulky. And my favourite nickname for him was, you miserable old bastard.
And that's his face?
Yeah. Oh. Because he just got more and more moody and more. No, I mean, now I understand. There was all sorts of depression going on. His dad had dementia. There was a load of shit going on, but he wouldn't share it with me. So I actually didn't even know he was having that many problems. He was just a miserable old bastard. So that's what I used to call him. And so for the last few months that we were together, it was really awful, because we couldn't speak about his moodiness because he didn't actually have any self-awareness, and he was a blamer. And I was receiving that blame, and he was good at dumping blame and guilt on me because I was really good at receiving it. We actually taught each other how to have a really fucking awful relationship. It was a two-way street, you know.
Maybe you could write a book on that. Sounds like a lot of knowledge there. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's kind of like, I mean, a lot of my clients have, you know, or have had relationship problems. It's interesting enough at the, not last weekend, but the weekend before, when I flew out to Doha to be with Chapman, we were doing an interview. We're being interviewed for a book, 5 powerful couples in the world or something. And it was the first time that Mr. C had been with me. On an interview, and it was really interesting because they were sort of saying, you know, what would be the one thing that you would say to other couples, you know, and I know Ray and John, who were interviewing us, I think that they thought they were going to get, you know, this kind of like interview where everything was all sweetness and light, and we first glance, you know what I mean? And I was like that. Well, quite frankly, I didn't think his dress sense was any good. So I mean, I had no intention of seeing him again. And you know, I could just see they are such a loving, lovely couple, and we're just completely the opposite. You know, I love my husband, but he just do me head in, quite honestly. And I do tell him. And they said, you know, how long have you been together? And we were like, we've been together 23 years. And they were like, Oh, right. Okay, then. Because I think they thought I'd probably only been together a little while. But the main reason why we've ended up being together for so long is they asked us what one thing we could share. And I said it is communication.
Yeah.
Because even at the beginning, that was, slightly loud. And at the same time, if you know what I'm saying, before I went into personal development and realised that there is an art of communication. Even at that stage, what Chipper used to say to me is, the thing that really scares me is when you're quiet. And it was like, oh my God, because like he has no idea what's going on in my head at that stage. While I'm ranting and raving and telling him he's a wanker or whatever. Hello, for those people joining us, welcome to Cheryl Chapman as well. At least he knows what's going on in my head. But the minute he doesn't know what's going on, then that's scary. Does that make sense? So communication, I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at a couple of people who've joined us. So we've got the lovely Joan Mercer. Joan, we haven't seen you for ages and we miss you. Please come back into our lives and be here and make some comments. And hello, Renara from Scotland. 13, is that all? Positively tropical here in, well, maybe not now, but it was earlier. I presume that's your current degrees. Welcome from Scotland. Yes, I'm talking about, why am I still in a relationship that no longer serves me? But first of all, we're asking the question, how do you recognise that you're in a relationship that no longer serves you? So we've talked about, physical symptoms, feeling sick, churning headaches, sweaty palms, just not feeling at ease with yourself. And of course, Marion, that potentially leads to dis-ease in a different way, doesn't it?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And I think also for me, one of the big signals for me when a relationship is not serving me is when I really don't feel able to just express, so that I don't get blamed or that I don't feel that I'm going to get criticised or judged, or it's not going to make the other person completely shift the way that they relate to me. Because I know that in the past I used to feel like, you've kind of created this persona in a relationship and you just feel like you have to live up to it. And then by the time you've kind of established what you think that relationship should be, you've lost half of your personality and half of your identity. And then it's like this concern is, if I bring this into this, is it going to shift the relationship around? So when you really don't feel like you can be yourself, when you're constantly having to make excuses for yourself or to lie or to mislead or to not say what you're doing and not feel free and open to just be who you are again, I think that, that's another huge identifier that this is not serving me.
Yeah. Oh, the other one is making excuses. That for me, big one. Yeah. If you're making excuses on a regular, he's working hard or she's working hard, because obviously, we have a lot of men joining as well. So it might be they may be talking about another partner that is female, or male on male. He does this, she does that. That's the reason why you're making the excuses. But the other thing is, Joan, we've missed you too. Joan's just saying she's missed you too. Love Joan. Minara's saying, well, with the third husband, I've got to get it right. And you have to be yourself. That's right, Minara. There's a little theme coming through from the last few questions as well, isn't it? You've got to be yourself. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, if you can't be yourself, absolutely love that, Minara. That's a brilliant one. If you can't be yourself around these people, well, that's a really big indicator, isn't it, as well? Just I don't feel like I can be myself. I feel like I've got to put a show on. I feel like I've got to keep things to myself. But going back to like the communication, whether or not that is this kind of communication, or whether or not it is, look, can I just have a conversation with you? Because, when this happens, then I feel like this. And, so is that your intention? We talked about, the power of the communication before. So you're not blaming somebody else. I mean, nobody can make you feel anything. We know that. And of course, it's easy to say, oh, they're doing that and they're making me feel insignificant or whatever. But actually, you're allowing that in. But if you can just have a conversation with somebody and say, now, if that person doesn't give a shit and goes, well, whatever, or you're having a conversation with them and they change the conversation so it goes back onto them, and you're thinking, am I invisible? Do I even exist in this place at the minute? Because I don't feel very loved. I don't feel important. I don't feel seen, actually. I feel quite invisible. Don't feel recognised. Then, it's a difficult place. And so the question is, why would you stay in that environment? Well, we know our lovely Ruth Driscoll, who helps people, move out of relationships that are not serving them very well, would say, one of the main reasons, of course, is fear. Fear of change. We know that if nothing changes, nothing changes. But actually, people do fear change themselves, don't they, Maz?
Yeah, very much so. We've got there's two aspects of this. Is a lovely yoga teaching. So we've come from this pure mind, and we've got an ego, which means we're an individual person. But as soon as we begin to create attachments, and this attachment then comes in the form of things that you do want, but it also is things that you don't want. So you're attached to not having something, or you're attached to having something. As soon as we start to develop any kind of attachments, then that absolutely clouds our vision as what serves us as the individual self. And so understanding what those attachments are, because we've all got them, and the more we can understand them and the more we can free ourselves of them, then actually the freer we become. Because can you imagine if you weren't actually attached to anything, to the outcome of anything, or the possibility of anything, and you were just able to be in the present moment, right now, here, enjoying yourself, feeling whatever feeling is here, whether it's a good, bad, or an indifferent feeling, just allowing yourself to be the being expressing itself in the way that it is right now, with no attachment. I mean, think about pets. Pets are great, aren't they? Because they're not that attached. I mean, we give them an attachment as their owner, and they might have their things, but I don't think I've ever really seen a dog fight over a toy. Now, they might fight over food, because food has got a very different way of being, but they're not going to fight over their blanket or their patch of grass. So the things that we get attached to as adults, we can learn a lot from animals about not being so attached. And when the less attached we are to things, just the happier we are, the lighter we are, the more we're able to be ourselves. I just didn't think what your question was.
I did think of something though when you were saying that dogs don't get attached to something, and I was thinking, well, I'm not 100% sure about that. I know that they don't get attached as in fighting, but I do know that when I used to walk Ozzy, he'd piss about fucking 8 times on like a 3.
Yeah, but they're territorial. So yeah, because your territory is where you're safe. So I mean, humans are the same. We piss in places. So, and if the place that we piss regularly, it's ours. It's our territory, basically. So, like the kidneys and the action of the kidneys are very connected to the territory that we've got. And so, absolutely, it's an animal instinct to piss in your own garden. My fear of my Robert.
Is Robert the dog or the husband?
The dog.
Oh, it's a dog. All right. I was wondering. I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, territory for safety. Dogs don't, they're not going to get attached to the favourite mug, the favourite umbrella. Do you know what I mean? That sort of stuff, the stuff that we get attached to. It's not quite the same. And also, most pets are quite happy to be with anybody. So there's, as long as people are not cruel to them, most animals they kind of become familiar with people quite easily, so they don't get so attached. I mean, I think dogs get more attached than cats. I don't know, but that's because they have an alpha male. They've got this whole.
I think it is the territory bit, isn't it? Because I hear cats scrapping, outside my window sometimes on a night time because it's territorial. And again, I think it depends. Actually, I think with animals, it's very similar to humans, depending on what's happened. If there's been some kind of abuse in the past, then there are some animals that really won't let you go anywhere near their toy. Do you know?
Well, they're traumatized, and I think Robert might be traumatized, Renara.
Right,
yeah. What's to say? To kill my daughter's dog if he tries to pinch the new toy.
Might be a little bit. Let's do a bit of tapping on him, tapping down the spine. Tap, tap, tap.
Renara is a master tapper as well.
Master tapper, fabulous. She'll know what to do then. So the question is, why do you put up with it? Well, for me, I think it's because for me, there's not just two things, but two of the things that come up a lot with the people that I work with and people that Marion and I work with in the Find Your Why is the first one is that the mind loves what's familiar. So even if you want to leave and go, somewhere else, that's a change. That's moving. That's having to, get a new bank account if you want to leave. If you're in a house. I mean, look. I've been married a few times, but actually getting out of a mortgage is far more difficult than it is getting out of a marriage. Well, it used to be when I got divorced, which was like 11, 15, I can't remember, anyway, a few years ago. Anyway, the last time. So, you know, it's more difficult to get out of a mortgage sort of thing. So then it's like, well, where am I going to live? You know, who's going to pay the bills? You know, am I going to be regarded as a single person again? You know, as you get older, if you're a woman, are you a spinster? You know, some lovely name. Whereas a guy, you're a bachelor. So that kind of sounds quite, you know, Casanova-ish, doesn't it? So am I going to be given a label because if I move out of this situation, because I don't really want to tell people on my dirty laundry, so I don't want to tell them why I've moved from that situation, which of course then there's fear. Mind loves what's familiar, but also something else starts to creep in, which Marion and I, we do a lot with the genetic blueprinting, don't we? Because it can be one of the traumas, one of the wounds, if you like, isn't it? So I don't know if you want to talk about the wounds.
So with the genetic blueprinting, it's a system that we use to help you to define who you are so that you can see who you're not. You can stop trying to be who you're not and get on with being you. And one of the things that we can discover about you, it's called your core wound. And it's also a gift, because if we didn't have the gift that we have, we could not be wounded in that way. But I mean, like I've got the wound of rejection. Cheryl's got the wound of self-denial. But actually what that means, so because my wound is about being rejected and this idea of, oh, they won't be my friend or they won't like me. And now I understand how it's absolutely controlled my life, all of my life. And I've constantly tried to edit and manipulate situations so that I won't feel rejected. But I think I already did, or I wouldn't have been in the manipulation mode. Yeah. So because I've got this core wound of rejection, it's actually only able to be there because I've got this gift of being open. So I've got a gift of just sharing, and anybody who knows me knows me. I'm not the sort of person that you tell to keep secrets. I work with clients and I keep the information confidential. But over a glass of wine, don't tell me anything you don't want the world to know. Because I'm really open. If I know things, I just share them. I don't hide things. You know, I'm not a secretive person. And because I'm none of those things, that, like, the connection that I make is so important to me. So I'm always open to be in connection. So whenever there's a threat that connection isn't right or might actually turn into something negative, that absolutely, I don't know how to deal with it, because it floors me in my openness. And so with Cheryl, what Cheryl's got, she's got this brilliant gift of how wonderful she is when she's natural. She does things absolutely naturally. She's got no idea how great or powerful she is when she does them. And so she's got this idea that she has to try to be more than she is. So she denies how great she is. And has this expectation that she has to deliver something more than who she is, or she has to stand out more than she's been standing out. But actually the beauty of Cheryl is, and anybody who knows her will agree with me, is that when she's in flow, when she's being herself, when she's mucking around, when she's not being serious or not trying to be too, I don't know, in a box or trying to fit into something that she isn't, she's bloody brilliant. And then all of a sudden you'll tell her how great she is and she'll go, oh, that elf thing, oh, I'll do that every day. It's just completely compliments. She's Teflon when it comes to compliments. And this is the trait of self-denial. She's denying herself because she's so natural. She doesn't get it. She's like, but that's natural. That's normal. And it's like, no, it's not. It's normal for you. It's who you are. But you're an outstanding being. Oh, this old thing.
Yeah. Someone called me the other day and they said, oh, you know, I've got this great idea, you know, and I get, you know, people say to me a lot, oh, you should be on stage. And I'm like, well, I am on stage. I'm a public speaker. And they're like, no, you should be a comedian. I'm like, there's no way. I am not funny at all. There's no way that I could be a comedian. And then the amount of people that are like, but you are. And I'm like, but I'm not funny. And they're like, no, but you are. And I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. I know that I can see, you know, a situation every now and again, but I don't really see that. I'm like, well, everyone does that. And that's the self-denial that comes out because you don't see it. It's really difficult to explain. I can see Marion's wound really clearly because I'm like, oh, there she goes. She thinks she's lost a mate. So now she might not feel very well, or she thinks she said the wrong thing or something like that. But Marion does see it, but it still isn't aware of it fully.
Yeah.
And when we were at the Marrakesh retreat quite recently, one of the ladies' wounds was shame, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And she was like, no, there's no way at all. There's no way that meant, no. And then what happened the day after, Marion? And you were like, hello, that'd be the shame.
That was in the car.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
They'd gone on a road trip, hadn't they, for the day? There's one of the groups of the WHYS women. They'd gone on this road trip in Marrakesh and to the Atlas Mountains. Beautiful. And they were sat in a car. I think they were like near a cafe, but they were basically, the car had been kind of dumped in the middle of the road by the driver, and he'd gone off to, I don't know, get a coffee, buy a camel. I don't know what you do in Marrakesh. And then, but because he'd gone away and they were all sat in the car, the woman who's got this thing of shame, she was saying to them all, we need to move. We need to, well, should we get out? Should we stay? She's like, we can't stay here. And then she said suddenly it dawned on her that the reason that she felt that nobody else was bothered that they was in this car in the middle of this road and people were paying attention to them. Nobody actually gave a shit. But this woman really did. And she said, I suddenly realised this is it. This is that feeling of shame. And it's everywhere. It's like once you spot it, you realise it's something that is constantly with you, and it'll spike now and again, but it never completely goes away. It's always kind of there. So when you find out what your core wound is, it absolutely answers so many questions, doesn't it? It fills in so many gaps. You're like, oh my God, no wonder this happened in this situation, and no wonder that happened in that situation. So it really does help you to make a lot of sense and meaning out of many of your past experiences and what's going on in you currently as well. And I think definitely when it comes to working out what kind of role you need to play in your relationship to be yourself, it's really, really cool. It's crucial actually to know this stuff about yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, going back to that shame, I was talking to one of our other WHYS women the other day, and they were talking about, how they were in a relationship. They've been in a relationship for a long time. Neither of them were happy. See, this is the key. Probably the other person isn't happy either. I mean, unless they're a complete control and, they get a buzz out, a kick out of that. But actually deep down, that's probably because they've got a trauma. Well, it's definitely because they've got a trauma as well, by the way. So, so neither of them were really happy. They're both kind of compromising, not really communicating. And so she said, the reason why she wouldn't leave is because she just did not want to be a single parent. Yeah. And the shame that would come with that. So she stayed in a relationship longer than she could do. Of course, once she found out about what this core wound was, like Marion said, she was like, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Oh my gosh, that's what it is. And of course, when you know what to do instead, all of a sudden she's out of that relationship. Of course, there were challenges along the way, but she's out of that relationship. And now they're actually both much happier. Does that make sense?
Two other things about relationships. So, and it's really nice, Joan, that you sent us this message about yours and how long it takes you to detach from it, even though it was shit. Because not only is there the shame or the rejection from society, because society sees it as normal that you're in a relationship. It's like you should be in a relationship as far as society is concerned. As you were saying before, the old maid or the single parent, all these ideas, these labels that are placed on you when you take a stand and move out of a relationship that's not serving you. So you've got to face all of that. And then the other part of it is we are actually social creatures. We're mammals. And so we thrive on intimate relationships, because otherwise there'd be no human race for a start. But we actually thrive. And part of our socialization is what helps us to thrive. So, however good we feel in our community or our society, and that's not just for sort of basic safety, which is a huge part of it. But I think, when you're in a community that you feel that you trust it and you feel you can be yourself, that's a place through which I think any adult could really, accelerate their growth or be the best version of themselves. It's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's really true. We can't separate ourselves from the society around us. We can't separate ourselves. We live in the environment with all of those people. And so those two things are going to play a big role. So you don't want everybody calling you a single parent slag or whatever they call you because you're single. And you don't want to feel like, you're lonely and you're on your own. Some people deal with being on their own better than others. But there are those two key areas as well that definitely play into why people stay in relationships longer than is good for them.
Yeah. I know, and I think I mentioned this before, Marissa Peer said something really powerful when I first, met her. And that was, if you were in a room and cyanide gas started to come through, underneath the door, through the plug holes, through the ceiling, how long would you stay in that room? You wouldn't. You'd get the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? So why would you stay in a toxic relationship? And interestingly enough, there's lots of people saying, oh well, I've been in a friendship for like years, but over the years you do change.
Yeah.
Same as in if I know Mr. C got married when he was 19, he's not going to be the same Mr. C when he was 19 as he is now. So the chances of that relationship, still being the same, unless they've sort of both grown up and communicated and changed. And I know that we do have a society where there are lots of older people who are in relationships 50, 60, 70 years, and I know that that's lovely, but a lot of the time I think that kind of came from a time where you didn't recycle things, for example. You didn't recycle things, you wouldn't throw things away. We live in a disposable society, and I know that there are benefits and there are downsides to that. But there is something very important that I would say, and that is if you are not happy and that happiness starts to not happen on a regular basis because you are spending your time with another person, you have to ask the question, why are you putting up with it?
Absolutely.
That cannot be stopping you at all.
There's another key on this as well. There's another key point here, because people will often stay in a relationship for the kids. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is not only killing yourself, but you're absolutely giving your kids no chance of ever seeing how to stand up for themselves. You're a role model for your kids. And so by you feeling like you have to sacrifice yourself for them, you're teaching them to be sacrificial. You're teaching them to want to be a martyr. And I think if people realise that, they would stop doing this whole bloody thing about I'm sacrificing myself for the kids. I'm a martyr to my family, because all you're doing is teaching your children to either go with you and become a martyr, or on the other side of it, come out of it and be like a bully or a narcissist or somebody else who's, really out of balance with relationships as well. So, yeah, doing it for the kids, that's bollocks.
To Robbie and Kylie, that's for anybody who knows that song. So number one, you have to be number one. You have to be yourself. And if you're in a relationship where it isn't serving you anymore, you're miserable every day, it's really destructive. And the fact that you physically feel ill and mentally you feel ill, then where is the line? Where's the line for you? And the question, of course, don't get me wrong, I know of people who do have children, maybe 2 or 3, maybe more children, and I know that there are difficulties. I don't know what that's like to be in that situation. I cannot comment on that. I do know some people in that situation. I know that they've chosen to stay with their partners, and of course they're doing what is best for them, because maybe the alternative is that it would be even worse. But is that true, really? Because you only have one life. You only have one life. And at the end of the day, you're not here to be miserable. I don't believe anybody came onto this world to experience miserability. Is there such a word as that? Every single day. Nobody's been put on this earth to be a fucking victim or a martyr. And I don't care if it's family, friends, loved ones, work colleagues. You don't have to put up with it. You don't have to put up with it. And I know that there isn't a one-stop shop. I'm going to leave my partner. I've got 5 kids. I'm going to just move in, to live in a hostel. I know that doesn't sound attractive, and that's not really what we're talking about here. I'm talking about in terms of just for you. What is it that you want out of a relationship? And if it isn't this, then seriously, there's got to be an exit strategy. Even if it's not now, where can you go to get some support? Where can you go to feel better? Because even if you decide to stay, at least get out and get a bit of oxygen before you go back into the bloody toxic environment. Because I don't know all that practicalities about how to get out there. That's not what I'm really talking about. I love Renara. Hurrah for Marion saying bollocks. Welcome to the show. The other thing that I've noticed, actually, interesting enough, with some clients quite recently, is how they are distracting from relationships. So distracting with food, alcohol, sex, drugs, and sausage rolls is what I call it. So it's a really good thing to notice that if you are in a relationship, whatever, personal, professional, whatever, if there's a certain trigger, or if there's a certain time that you notice that you eat more, drink more, and I'm not talking water, of course, or lettuce, I'm talking about, the bad things in life, or where you might cry, or just notice what happens when these particular triggers are triggered. So, I need to have a chocolate biscuit, I'm feeling like shit, or whatever. It's really good to keep an emotional diary. So when this has just happened, I really feel like I want to eat a full packet, 50 biscuits in one go. Or when this happened, I went and ate a full bar of chocolate. And what notice these things, because you're going to start noticing emotional triggers, and of course awareness, which is what we talk about as part of the Find Your Why process. It's a biggie. Awareness is just spotting what's going on with the feelings, because if you're totally oblivious to them, then they can really get a hold of you. But if you start to be aware of, when that happens, I do this. Well, why are you doing it? What is the emotion you're trying to suppress, really, isn't it, Maz? I mean, that's what's kind of going on there. One of my clients said the other day that they were suppressing this feeling that they thought the other person would be sad when they finished with them. Well, couple of things there. One, you have no idea what that person's going to be like. And two, if you are living in the future and you're going to finish with them, do them a favour. Finish with them now. Yeah. So either live in the now or stop it. Stop the relationship. Because if you're going to do it in the future, you're right, that other person may well get attached to you, may well feel shit, and you'll feel shit for making them feel shit. But they're not necessarily going to react in the same way as you, because they've got different baggage that they brought to the party, yeah? A different booze bag they brought to the party. Matt, anything else to add in terms of how to notice you're in a bad relationship, or what to do if you are in a relationship, or why you put up with it, right?
Yeah, no, I think that it's all about noticing your own state. So that's awareness. And then there's the intention, isn't it? Start to build a picture of what a good relationship would be like, and use the negative experiences to create positive intentions for the future if you're having them. So you can actually start to build it, and use as much support as you can get. There's loads of support out there. We've got the divorce expert, Susie, who's she's running an event in September. So we're on the possible list. Yeah, not to be divorced, to be helping the divorcees.
And the amazing Ruth Driscoll, who's part of our Find Your Why Foundation, an amazing woman who's been through that experience herself. So there are many people out there who have had the experience of being in traumatic relationships that want to come out of those relationships, or who did come out of those relationships. So, Ruth's got an amazing program, hasn't she? So if anybody's, if you want to find out about that, just private message us and we'll put you in touch with Ruth, or of course you can look up, directly if you don't want us to be involved. But remember, you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to figure it out on your own. So before we say good evening, I'm just going to say, remember to live, love, and laugh every day. So it's goodbye from her.
And it's goodbye from me.
And we'll see you tomorrow for another Wise Woman question. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching the recording, please share, likes and comments. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Good evening.
Bye.
Bye.